Hi there, in this video we're going to be talking about how to complete rate and ratio tables. In earlier videos we talked about what rates and ratios are, and we're going to see as we continue in this chapter that rates and ratios can be used to solve prediction problems or comparison problems, and that's because we can take a ratio and make an equivalent ratio to use in a prediction type problem. So for example, this is the question here. If 2 pizzas feed 9 guests, how many pizzas do you need to feed 27 guests? Well, 2 pizzas to 9 guests is a type of ratio. And then if we can make an equivalent ratio to this that involves the number 27, then we can use that ratio to figure out how many pizzas we need. And we can do that by putting our numbers in a ratio, and it just stays easier to organize. All right, well, there are 2 ways you can solve a rate or ratio table, and one is involving scale factor. And when you use scale factor, you're either going to be multiplying or dividing. And you're going to multiply and divide one column in order to get to the next column, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so we've already looked at this first problem, 2 pizzas. So 2 pizzas feed 9 guests, and we want to know how many pizzas feed 27 guests. All right. So what we're trying to do is create an equivalent ratio. So how do I change 9 to 27? What number do I multiply or divide by in order to make 9 27? Well, if I multiply 9 by 3, then I get the number 27. Well, this is my scale factor. So what I want to do is I want to multiply the top of this other number by 3 as well, using the same scale so that these stay equivalent. To get the missing number here. So 2 times 3 is 6. So what I've done is create 2 equivalent fractions, but because I'm looking for the number of pizzas for 27 guests, what I want to know is this number right here, 6 pizzas. All right, so I use scale factor to do this. I figured out what times 9 equals 27, and then I use that same number to multiply by 2. All right, so it took us 6, pizzas. All right, for the next problem, it says if 5 DVDs cost $40, how much will 10 DVDs cost? And notice this time the number missing is in a different part of the table, and that really doesn't matter, okay? Because we're just going to use the same scale whether we're on the top part of the table or on the bottom part of the table. And by scale I mean what number am I multiplying or dividing by? All right, so in order for me to change 5 into 10, I need to multiply by 2. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing to the 40. I need to multiply it by 2. So what is 40 times 2? 80. So that tells me that if I buy 10 DVDs, it's going to cost me $80. All right, in the third problem, it says 6 cups of pecans serve 24 people. How many cups are needed for 8 people? So 6 cups of pecans, 24 people. How many cups for 8 people? All right, so again, I want to figure out how am I getting from 24 to 8. Well, notice this time I got smaller, so I'm actually going to be dividing this time. So what number divided by 24 gives me 8? Well, if I divide by 3, 24 divided by 3, I get 8. So I need to do the same thing to the 6 down here. I want to divide it by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that tells me I'll take 2 cups of pecans for 8 people. All right, so that's one way to solve a ratio table, and perhaps that is the easiest way. But there's also another way that we use. It's probably just as common actually, and that's when we use the unit rate. So again, this is a word you've seen before. A unit rate, remember, stands for the rate per one item, or if it's unit price, it's the price for one item that you're buying. All right, in order to find the unit rate, you've done this before, you divide. And remember, we called it the UNO rate. We're dividing to find the amount for one item. All right, so after we find the UNO rate, then we're going to multiply to complete the table. All right, so here's an example. If you can buy 5 CDs for $50, how much would 32 CDs cost? All right, so I have 5 and $50, I have 32, and I'm trying to find this amount here, but because of what I did in earlier problems, I would have looked to see, all right, what times 5 gives me 32? Well, that is not an easy thing to figure out. There is no easy number that says 5 times that number would equal 32. So this is a case where it would be simpler to find the unit rate and then use that to get to 32. All right, so what do we mean? We're going to divide to find the cost for 1 CD. So when I do that, when I find the unit price, I'm dividing the price per the amount of items. So I'm going to do 50 divided by 5. 5 will go into 50 10 times. So that tells me 1 CD costs $10. All right, so now that I know the cost for 1 CD, I can use scale factor again to multiply and figure out the cost for 32 CDs. So now I can say, all right, well, 1 times 32 gives me 32. So if I multiply 10 times 32, that'll tell me the cost for 32 CDs. So if I multiply, if you don't know what that is, times 10, you get 0, 0, start with a 0, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3, and this ends up being $320. All right, so to kind of just repeat what I did, I divide it because there was no easy way to go from 5 to 32. What I did was I simplified, or I figured out the unit rate by dividing. So I divided 50 by 5 so I could find the cost for 1, and then I used that to find the cost for 32. All right, so let's try the second example. If an ostrich can run 70 miles in 35 minutes, so I have 70 miles, 35 minutes, then how far can an ostrich run in 17 minutes? All right, so again, I can see that this number got smaller, but there's not an easy number to divide by in order to change 35 to 17. So again, this might be a case where it's easier to find the unit rate, and then I can use that number to find the number of miles an ostrich can run in 17 minutes. All right, so I'm dividing. I'm going to do 70 divided by 35. 35 goes into 72 times with no remainder. All right, so for every 2 miles, it takes 1 minute. And then I use this number to get to 17. So now if I multiply times 17, I get 17 here. So if I do the same thing on top, what is 2 times 17? If you don't know the answer to that, you just need to multiply. 2 times 7 is 14. Carry your 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So this tells me 34 miles. Oh, and this one up here was $320. All right, so just to kind of sum it up, there are a couple ways that you can solve or complete a ratio or rate table. One is using scale factor. That's when you're multiplying or dividing to get from one column to the next. Whatever you do to the bottom or top of your column, you do to the opposite side of the column in order to keep the ratios equivalent. So if you multiply by 3 here, you have to multiply by 3 here. Okay, same thing with division. Or sometimes scaling is difficult because the numbers aren't pretty, like here, getting from 5 to 32. And so when that happens, you can use the unit rate. Remember, we divide to find the unit rate, the rate for 1. So once we figure out the rate for 1, then we can use scaling, multiplying or dividing. I guess it'll always be multiplying in this case, to get to complete the table. So we divide it to get the cost for 1, and then we use that to multiply and get the cost for 32 here, and then down here we multiplied to get the number of miles for 17 minutes. Okay, see you in class.